Okay, we're getting close to the meeting time. If everyone could look to get to their seats. Okay, it looks like the audience is, for the most part, here and getting ready to sit down, so I think we can start getting ready for the meeting. And we start out with the first item on the agenda, would go to the city.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock on the dot, I believe it is.
Elsinore Valley will now call our meeting to order at 6 o'clock.
Canyon Lake POA will call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Do we have somebody here who is going to do the invocation for us?
You can select someone if you'd like.
Nancy, would you like to do the invocation?
Yes. Heavenly Father, we are gathered here for a very historic meeting. We are blessed to have all of our elected officials in one room at the same time. It has never happened before, as far as I know. And so it's your grace that has provided this opportunity for us to get together. We understand that we live in a place that is very blessed, that we have an amazing amount of opportunities for people to live peacefully and happily in this city and in this water district and in this gated community. We thank you for all the blessings that you have showered upon us. We thank you for the water that we have now in the lake so early in the year. We thank you for the many improvements that have been done in the POA, and we thank you for the new and very interesting ideas that are going on in the city. It's a great time for Canyon Lake. Thank you, Lord, in the name of your Son. Amen.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll do the flag salute, and if we'd all please rise and join me. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Bonner?
Here.
Councilmember Green?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Here.
Mayor Aaron-Kranz?
Here.
All present.
Yes. President Morris?
Here.
Vice President Williams?
Here.
Director Burke?
Here.
Director McBride?
Here.
Director Ryan?
Here.
All present.
Okay, can we get a POA roll call, Harmony?
Yes, sir. Director Nathan?
Here.
Director Berringham is absent. Director Odell?
Here.
Director Poland?
Here.
President Welty?
Here.
4 present, 1 absent. Quorum met.
May I have an approval of the agenda by the City Council, please? I guess we're sharing a mic here, I'm sorry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District approval of the agenda, please.
I move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 5-0.
Do we have any public comments?
I'll go ahead and read the public comment statement. Any person wishing to address the City Council and Board of Directors on any matter on this agenda is asked to complete a speaker request form available on the back counter. The completed form is to be submitted to the City Clerk prior to an individual being heard by the City Council and Board of Directors. The City Council has adopted a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you're commenting on the agenda item, your comments will be heard at the time that particular item is scheduled on the agenda. No comments on any item not on this agenda will be taken at this special meeting. I don't have any cards. Okay.
Okay, then I guess we're moving on to the EVMWD.
All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and have a presentation.
Good evening, President Morris, members of my board, Mayor Aaron Kranz, and members of the council, and President Welty and members of the POA board. Good evening. My name is Greg Morrison. I am the Government Relations Officer for El Sonora Valley Municipal Water District, and I will be giving the presentation tonight. I take it everybody can hear me okay, even in the audience? It's coming across? Okay. Appreciate that. On behalf of EVMWD, I'm pleased to be here representing the water agency at this tri-party meeting, somewhat of a historic tri-party meeting, I think. Nancy Horton mentioned that earlier this evening. So it's my pleasure to be here and be part of our continuing efforts to improve communications between the three parties here, since we all have some vested interest in the health of Canyon Lake and the drinking water that is in Canyon Lake. As I go through this presentation tonight, I'm going to probably, just my own vernacular, probably refer to it as Canyon Lake instead of Railroad Canyon Reservoir and back and forth. Our treatment plant at the water district at the lake, we refer to that as the Canyon Lake Water Treatment Plant, so that's what I'm used to saying. So Canyon Lake or Railroad Canyon Reservoir, it's one and the same. So I appreciate that and appreciate the opportunity tonight. I would just like to also, as a friend and colleague, I'd like to recognize First District Supervisor Kevin Jeffries for attending this evening. Thank you for coming, Kevin. So we can go ahead. This is just a quick outline of what we're going to be discussing this evening. And there will be, I believe, plenty of time at the end of the meeting this evening to have question and answer. I'll be happy to, at the end of the presentation, to take questions from my board or the City Council or the POA board, and then obviously open it up, I believe, to public questions and answers. If that is the case, if there's anybody in the public, and I apologize that some of the my back is to some of the public, I apologize for that. But if you're interested in asking a question, as the city clerk mentioned, there are speaker question forms at the back of the room. If you could fill one of those out, and I believe provide it to Anna, would that be okay if they provide it to you? That way we can keep track of that as we go through the presentation. So with that, I will get right into it. The history, there's been a long, long history, and I know a lot of you are familiar with the history, but Canyon Lake was originally constructed by the Temescal Water Company back in 1928. It was originally intended as far as the Temescal Water Company is concerned, as for irrigation purposes, to create the lake for irrigation purposes. But even as early as 1952, as you can see up there, El Sonora Valley Municipal Water District saw the value of that, and so we reached an agreement with the Temescal Water Company at the time to reserve some of that water behind the dam for potable uses as well, or drinking water purposes. Probably the biggest part of the history is the lease agreement that was entered into between the POA and the Temescal Water Company early on. And then the next big step in that history is in 1989, when El Sonora Valley Municipal Water District purchased the Temescal Water Company, and at the time purchased all rights and reservations with Canyon Lake and the dam, as well as accepted the existing lease agreement that was in place between the POA at the time and the Temescal Water Company. So the reason, I guess, if you will, for Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District to purchase Temescal Water Company is that the intrinsic value that we saw as a water district and the ability to utilize additional water supplies for drinking water purposes. And so that was really kind of the basis for the efforts to purchase the Temescal Water Company. Next slide. So the lease agreement, it's a very thick document. I don't know how many of you have actually read through it, but there's a lot to it. And I won't go through all the amendments here except to mention that the original lease agreement that we inherited when we purchased the Temescal Water Company was set to expire in 2022. And when I first started with the water district, boy, that seemed like hundreds of years away, 2022, and here we are 2 years from now, and that's when it would have naturally expired. But I guess that probably the biggest and most important amendment, if you will, is amendment number 5, which is really what the water district and the POA were working to resolve early on. That would extend the original agreement an additional 44 years, taking us out to 2066. Now that is a long time away, and I know I won't be around here when that comes up. But the other piece of it was the way that we went about calculating, the formula that we went about calculating the lease payment to the POA, and it was admittedly a rather complicated complicated formula, because it dealt with the use of, or not the use, but the Metropolitan Water District, who is our main wholesaler for the water. It was certain rates and charges that they had, and it just was complicated. And so the agreement was, the POA asked, hey, look, what about a consumer price index for the annual escalator in the lease, and calculating that payment. And so that's really the two biggest pieces of that Amendment 5 that came about. And the other piece was that it rescinded Amendment 3, which makes perfect sense, just for separate lease agreements for some of the area. So it's all encompassed in one amendment. The next slide. This was a big one. The recreational use in Canyon Lake. If you look at the State Health and Safety Code, the State Health and Safety Code does not allow for body contact on drinking water reservoirs, open air drinking water reservoirs, without an exemption to that specific health and safety code. So if you look around Southern California and you look at the open air reservoirs like Canyon Lake, like Lake Skinner, like Diamond Valley Lake, those facilities, if they were to allow body contact, they would have to go through, number one, get a health and safety code exemption, and that requires legislation. You can't just do that. It requires legislation to be passed and then signed by the governor. And typically that requires substantially more treatment processes to treat that water for drinking water standards. So back in, it was actually, we started the effort late 2003, believe it or not, and early 2004 to go about. We didn't have this exemption, this health and safety code exemption. So we needed to get, if we were going to continue to allow, let me rephrase that, be allowed by the state of California to allow for body contact on Canyon Lake, we needed this health and safety code exemption. So we initiated a bill and worked it through the legislature, and I believe then Assemblyman Jeffries helped us with that legislation, chaperoned that through the legislature, and it was quite a long process, but we were able to get it through the legislature, not without additional treatment requirements that are required for us to treat that with treat that for drinking water purposes. So it was a big deal. It really codified the ability to continue to allow for body contact recreation on Canyon Lake because of that exemption. So what is the Railroad Canyon Reservoir or Canyon Lake? It covers approximately 507 acres. It's 15 miles of shoreline. There's some good pictures up there, give you an idea of what that looks like. I'd say probably the most important part of this slide is to understand that Canyon Lake is towards the end of a 728 square mile watershed that drains from Hemet area out where, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Mystic Lake. I mean, we get way out in those directions. So this is an incredibly large watershed that drains into Canyon Lake, and then ultimately the end of that watershed is Lake Elsinore. So just to give you an idea of how much drains into the lake and why it becomes such an important issue for us as a water agency on water quality as it relates to things going on upstream of the lake, because it does provide approximately 10% of our water supply throughout our entire service area. It allows for us to meet peak demands at points during the summertime when we need to meet those peak demands. And quite frankly, it is a huge diversification for us in our water portfolio. We don't want to rely completely on imported water. It's very expensive water, $1,100 an acre foot. Canyon Lake water that we treat out of our treatment plants, probably about 2/3, give or take. There's a lot of variables that come into play there, but a solid number is about 2/3 of that imported water supply. So it's a substantial savings to us and then on to our customers, because we can pass that savings on to our customers and maintaining our water rates at a reasonable level. So it's a very important supply for us as a water district as well. In addition, I recognize the recreational benefit and value, but it's a huge value to the water district. Next slide's fine. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about when it comes to treating water out of Canyon Lake, this is a great picture that you see up there on the slide. It shows the Canyon Lake, the end of the lake there with the dam and our water treatment plant. We can treat up to approximately 5 million gallons a day, and we typically operate this plant for about 6 months of the year. It does have gate valves at the base of the dam that are there for maintenance reasons, if we need to pull the lake level down for any reason, for maintenance reasons or any kind of an emergency. But the purpose of the gate valves is also to help maintain water quality as we are able to let water out of the bottom of the lake to help try and improve water quality if that's necessary. Some of the other things to consider, and you can see all of the logos up there, and that's just there to give you an idea of the different agencies, both federal and state, that we have to deal with on a regular, almost daily basis, depending on which agency you look at up there, on a daily basis, to make sure that we're doing our job to ensure safe, reliable water being treated out of that treatment plant. Army Corps of Engineers, that's more on the side of what's upstream of the lake. EPA, the state water boards, it's a very delicate balance between all of those agencies, plus us and the city and the Canyon Lake POA. One of the other things that I might mention under this particular slide is in dealing with these agencies, some of you may have heard this acronym called PFAS. I don't know if anybody's heard that term yet, PFAS or PFOA. So we're always looking at the different constituents that funnel down that 728 square mile watershed into the lake, and there are any number of constituents that we're looking at. This PFAS it's a new, what they're calling a forever chemical. We can get into that a little bit more later if you like, but there's all kinds of other things that we have to keep an eye on as well, like arsenic and other things that just come in from the watershed that we have to treat through this treatment plant. So you can understand the complexity of what needs to take place up there to make sure that the water that we're serving is safe and reliable out of that plant. Next slide. Oop, that one's a little off there, but this is what really we're going to be talking about, and probably in more detail here. The first part of my presentation was just really kind of the history to get everybody familiar with what we're dealing with here. But the main topic of discussion here tonight is going to center on the settlement agreement between the Canyon Lake POA and the Water District with regard to encroachments into the lake by different property owners. It's a significant item of concern for both EVMWD and the POA. And as I noted previously, our entities have an agreement that allows for the use of the Canyon Lake Reservoir for recreational purposes, and allowed a certain amount of private encroachment onto EVMWD property. So what you see here is that the black line in the pictures illustrates the shoreline, the shoreline, the property line for EVMWD, and what is going beyond that property line into EVMWD's property, which is going towards the body of water. So the two pictures, like I said, show the encroachment, and they're beautiful properties, but as you can see, there's a significant amount of private or personal landscape. There's structures, as you can see from the pictures, onto the EVMWD property. We're not necessarily going to talk about how those got there at this point. We're moving beyond that tonight, but the lakefront property, however, as an example of property right concerns, what happens if your neighbor, so the goal is we reached an agreement to say we're allowing for certain encroachments onto EVMWD property, but still trying to maintain, we want to make sure that we maintain water quality, and it will be future encroachments into EVMWD property within the lake boundaries, like you see there, will be at the discretion of the POA and EVMWD as it relates to future improvements of private interests onto EVMWD's property. Right now, there's currently approximately 1,100 of those existing encroachments on the entire property line around Canyon Lake. Next slide, please. So now we're on to the settlement agreement that we reached. As a part of the recent lawsuit between EVMWD and the Canyon Lake POA, we signed a settlement agreement at the end of December of this last year, 2019. It's currently at the court for final administrative sign-off, but it's just really a formality at this point. As noted in the first bullet, part of the settlement agreement, or part of the agreement, grandfathers all previous encroachments. So if there are property owners that already have, like the pictures that you saw, those are all being grandfathered in as part of this settlement agreement. So there's really not a whole lot that existing property owners with those encroachments have to do, but we can get into a little bit more of that in detail after the presentation. However, the court and the POA they'll provide more details to current Canyon Lake homeowners as far as opting in or opting out as part of this agreement, and I believe the POA will be discussing that in a little bit later. Also, I think that's good too. Oh, it's the football game. Yes, go LSU. Yeah, right. Yeah, they're just as happy as we are. Must all be lakefront property owner. As part of the settlement, and to avoid any illegal or excessive encroachments, a new application process and approval process has been established, and it'll protect all parties going forward. And this is a good thing for both the Water District and the POA. So while the POA and EVMWD and the court are finalizing these certain documents, a temporary application moratorium for new encroachments other than docks and seawalls. So we're talking gazebos, pools, that sort of thing, but that's where the moratorium is really going to apply. The only thing that's not part of the moratorium are docks and seawalls, because we understand the importance of that. But that will be imposed temporarily while we in the POA work through the final documents. And I believe the POA will have a few more details on this later on. So the next steps, given the class, what we're calling the class certification up there, of the settlement agreement, homeowners can choose to opt in or opt out of the process. And basically, for bottom line here, those that have already been grandfathered in, so these are encroachments that have been built, they're already there. The process for those homeowners is really not a whole lot. They don't have to opt in. They're considered part of this grandfather and this class certification. However, if they still want to be part of it, but have some comments about the settlement agreement, then they would actually have to physically fill out some different forms, and I believe the POA is going to discuss this in more detail later as well, some additional forms for the court to make those comments known. Or if they don't want to be part of the class certification at all, they would have to opt out as part of this legal process, and that I would think would be a little bit detrimental to a homeowner if they chose to do that, if they had encroachments, because if they did opt out, I believe the way the settlement agreement is put together, it would give the POA and the water district the right to ask them to remove any encroachments that they have on EVMWD property. So it really I don't believe would be in their best interest to do that. And all of this information, and again, I believe the POA will have additional information on this later, but the POA will be sending out that notification to all homeowners, and that I believe the deadline for that is January 31st, that those all have to be mailed out, and then residents would have to respond. If they have comments, they'd have to respond by, I believe, March 2nd at that point. So the next slide, I think that concludes my portion of the presentation of the history and overview of this issue. I would be happy to answer any questions that my board, the POA board, or the city council might have. I also want to introduce, we have several staff members here this evening from Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District that are very familiar with lake operations, the shoreline, our CPI issues. So I have Margie Armstrong here. I also have Jace Warner here, and I also have Jason Dafford and Bonnie Woodrome here from staff. So if I can't answer the question, I'm going to defer to the experts over there sitting in the front row, because I don't want to make a mistake. So with that, thank you for your patience and your time during my presentation, and I would turn it over to the presidents and mayor, I guess, to field any questions.
Yeah, I have one question. You spoke about docks being exempted from the moratorium. My understanding is it not only includes docks, but repairs to current docks, list to docks, coverage for docks. So if you have a dock, you can still come in and apply to fix it, to put it that.
If it's an existing dock,
if it's an existing dock, right. So if I need to fix it, if a member needs to fix a dock, there's not a moratorium. You still need to come to the POA and follow the process. But don't stay home with a broken dock and think that you can't do it because of the moratorium. And if you have a specific question on your own particular property, because we can't look at everybody's plot map today, or everybody's photos of their dock, et cetera, today, that would be something you would just drive down to the POA and say, you know what, this is what I have on my shoreline, can you assist me on the process? So the staff down there, Cheryl down there, will help you. So again, if you have any questions on your particular issue, feel free to come down to the POA and sit down with the staff, and we'll try to be as helpful as possible to walk you through the process.
I have a question. You talk about all encroachments are grandfathered, the existing ones are grandfathered. When you sell your house, does it go with the house that all the encroachments have already been approved? Grandfathered.
Grandfathered. I believe that's correct, Councilman Bonner. So if it's, well, you know.
Yes, it's anticipated that the easement or the forgiveness for the encroachment continues on and runs with the property. Meaning if you sell it, your children inherit it, or whatever the situation is, it continues with the property.
Even if I will sell it to a third party, like different, not my family, somebody else.
Yes. The waiver goes with the property. You're not allowed to sell the property that's encroaching underneath it, the dirt, or the bottom of the lake. We still own that. EVMWD is allowing that encroachment to carry forward from now until eternity.
I have a question. We talk about the new permitting process and stuff. In that loop, it should be, the city should be involved after the POA and the encroachment is issued for the engineering, the inspections, and the permitting to make sure that it is at code so that you don't have a homeowner that buys something and then their lender says, well, let me see the permits for this wall or whatever has been approved. So I think the step, we would be probably the last in line because of obviously the approval process, but we definitely need to be, so everything is permitted, the electrical and everything that would be at that water's edge.
That's correct, Councilman Green. The permitting process would be, I guess it could almost be parallel. I'd defer to the city and the POA on that because you're right, that's where the engineering would take place, et cetera, that make sure everything was permitted correctly. The only reason it would come to the water district is just for us to be able to review what's being proposed into the encroachment onto our public property and make sure we don't see any detrimental effects to water quality issues. But yeah, as far as the permitting is concerned, the homeowner would still have to follow all legal permitting rules through the city, and then the process is through the POA.
And if I can add a comment, the city and the POA, the offices are about 75 feet apart. So for the most part, you should be able to go to the one building and get 90% of your answers. On occasion, they may have to reach out to EVMWD, but really it's not exactly one stop, but it's one stop and a little walk away for most approvals. So this should not be necessarily overwhelming. The most important thing is if you're going to do something, go to the POA and we'll help you get some directions. And part of that direction will be to go to the city. And if it's complicated, we may ask you to go to EVMWD.
Greg, I understand.
I just have a kind of a statement. So when somebody's coming in, if they have a pool and the POA, they have never been to the POA or the city, at this point they can come in and get grandfathered, but they still have to go through the permitting process with the city, is that correct? Or a dock, or a gazebo, or whatever it may be. If the POA or the city doesn't know it exists right now, and they want it to be grandfathered in under this, they need to come in right now and register that with the POA and go through the permitting process with the city, if I'm hearing correctly. That's not part of what you're saying. Well,
I'm
so
hoping,
how does the city know that it's been built to code?
yeah, as long as it's built to code,
If it goes to code.
but we had a period of time that there was some confusion, and I think that it's difficult as after built to determine if it's a code or not. So that's one of the issues you get into, and there is a process you can go through to get a waiver and everything else, but I do think that could pose a difficulty in the fact that if it's pre-existing, most everything in here should be coded in some form or fashion, but there could be some that fell through. And I'm not being naive, I think it's a fact. And I think Eric and I talked about that. So one of the things we want to make sure is everybody that has property here has the proper permits, codes, and the things, the encroachment permit, the POA's aesthetics, and all the things that they have, so that when they're all done, they got a nice clean package.
So I can chime in on that a little bit, Larry. On all the improvements existing as of March 26th, 2019 are being grandfathered in under the settlement agreement. And I don't know that there's any expectation on our part or EVMWD's part. Sounds like you're asking now about whether any of those improvements that are being grandfathered as of that date will be retroactively inspected? No?
No.
Going forward, 100%, all three agencies at the table here will be approving.
Correct.
All
All I'm saying is what he was going off of is being grandfathered based on the permitting. And we had, I think it was last year or so, we had a big issue on electrical because of the shock factors we've got going on. I think we've got that cleaned up, but, because of the electrical at the docks or on the seawalls, and then transmitting through the metal docks or whatever. So I'm just saying that I want to make sure that whatever we got out there, it's safe. And I don't look us to go back and re-inspect something. That is not our intent. It's just to make sure everything's to code. And if we grandfather them in, then we grandfather them in. But everything after that is, it has to be inspected and follow the process that we've got in place. Yeah.
I understand that the EVMWD has no inspectors, is that correct? You have nothing to do with the inspection?
Not as it relates to the codes for electrical and whatever would be being built. We're looking at it purely from the aspect of water quality protection and to make sure that they don't build something over infrastructure that we have in the ground, potentially.
But the permitting process and the inspection process is strictly up to the POA and the city?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
If I can add a comment, the POA intends to have a workshop for the members. Once the settlement's been kind of stamped and it goes out and the letter goes out, we intend to give you another opportunity to come to the POA board. And if you have any questions about the information that's being released, you can come on ahead and we'll listen and see if we can answer your question. We might take an opportunity to invite maybe a representative from EVMWD in the city to that meeting. I don't necessarily think that all the boards need to be at it, but it'll give you an opportunity because you're going to get some documents in the mail. You may not understand that document, and we'll take that. We'll give you an opportunity to come into one of these workshops. Because if you have a question, there's a chance that your neighbor may have a similar question. So we intend to have a workshop once you get more information to come on in, and we'll try to even give you more answers to more detailed questions.
Mayor, we do have one public comment card. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll ask Brenda to come up, please.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Janusik, tract and lot 3720083. Hi, Mr. Morrison. I was going to think you the same thing. And I'm going to comment on something that you said. You had mentioned that the opt-out process was available to waterfront owners. I'm a waterfront owner. But that opt-out might allow the POA and the water district to make us remove our waterfront improvements, even though we have an easement. And my question, that sounds like strong arm to opt in, which I haven't read the settlement agreement. I've asked for documents. My husband's a dentist. He's good at pulling teeth. I'm not. And so I feel like I've been pulling teeth for 5 years. And I would like the documents to flow readily when I ask, but they don't. They haven't. Eric's been pretty good at it, but for the past year, I keep watching the POA meetings and nothing to report, nothing to report. However, when I look at the court docket, there's lots to report. I've just given up being vocal about it because it serves no purpose. But when you commented, I just did my lakefront improvements with permits and easements, and I read my easement, and it's recorded, and it runs with the land, like you said, and I like that. So I don't know how you would be able to make me remove all of that money that all of the value that I just improved my property with when I have a binding contract, the easement, and it talks about how I have an obligation now to maintain that. under the existing contract. So maybe you could explain that. How am I supposed to maintain and not be in breach of my contract? And how are you able to remove my things when I haven't breached that agreement? That's all.
Brenda, it's nice to finally put a face with a name. We've talked for many times over the years, so it's nice to meet you in person. What I might do is ask our general manager, Greg Thomas, if he'd like to maybe comment on the specifics of that. One clarifying question, though, that I'd like to ask: when did you complete the improvements that you're speaking of?
I believe it was December of last year. I don't remember the date, but it's all documented. And
December of 2019?
No, December of 2018.
Okay, so at this point, a short answer to your question, I'll still turn over to Mr. Thomas if he'd like to add to it, but the short answer to your question is that any improvements that lakefront homeowners made with encroachment sign off from the water district prior to, I believe, March of 2019 are all grandfathered in. So that's what I was, there's a few nuances there, but at the end of the day, the short answer to your question is if you want to keep what you've put in, there's really nothing you have to do. We're not going to come back to you and change anything on you. It's improvements that were done after March of 2019 that could possibly have some impact.
And to follow up on that, then, the comment was a general comment, not referring to improvements before March of 2019. If we have done everything correctly, gotten our permits, paid our fees, made our improvements, the easement is recorded with the land, it runs with the land, whether we opt in or opt out is not an issue.
Yes.
Okay.
And so in other words, you don't even have to opt in. You're already grandfathered without doing any more action on your own part. You are just automatically grandfathered in based on your construction timeline and when it was built.
Okay, but here's the thing. When you talk about I don't have to do anything, I'm automatically included. I don't know that I want to be included in your settlement agreement because I don't agree to things that I haven't read, and I have not been given an opportunity to read it, and you've had it since December, and if I were litigating this, I would claim that the opposition was sandbagging me by holding back documents that I've asked for and they didn't give them to me. So I would like to read the settlement agreement. Hi, Eric.
Can I address that?
Yes.
Okay, your mic. Thank you. Brenda, I appreciate all of that. The settlement agreement was just executed within a matter of 8 or 9 days by both parties. I have a web address. I'll go ahead and read it right now. It's canyonlakepoa.com /372 is the page /lake-lease sorry, and the whole thing is there. And this is the first time it's been made public because it just got executed. Nobody was doing this. I mean, we've been making changes the whole time. It's a good document. I think it's a good document. I think we all think it's a good document. I think it's very fair. I think when you read it, I'd be really interested to hear your input on it, honestly. So please do read it and let me know what you think. But really it memorializes an agreement for the next 50 years about how the three agencies or three parties are going to work together and how we're going to approve improvements in this complicated area that's owned by someone else and leased by us. And it really just spells out a roadmap going forward. And Greg, it is, right? Greg's right that your improvements, everything before March 26, 2019 is automatically grandfathered in. That's part of the settlement agreement. I think because of that, you would want to opt in. I think everybody will want to opt in, and which basically means you don't have to do anything. And I don't know of a reason why someone would want to opt out, and so I would love for you to read it and give me a reason why that might be. You're an attorney, so you may see it differently, but I think you'll see it's a good document. It's public as of today. A couple hours ago, we posted it. And I think, do we have some copies here? No? Oh, it's 100 pages, so it's kind of hard to pass out. But it's available online right now.
Just a comment, Eric. I like that you gave them the address, but it might be easier just to put a link on the page, the POA page. So for the members who didn't get the page, we'll get a link on so you can go to Canyon Lake POA, our page, and just link onto it.
I thank you, Eric, for saying that, and I'll look that up certainly, and Greg too. My concerns are I was the lawyer that spoke up and said, "Oh God, don't sue," and we didn't win. And so, looking at the lease, we now have terms in the lease that require insurance in premiums and limits that are determined by the water district. We didn't have that in the previous lease that I could find. No, the POA, which comes back to us to pay for as homeowners. So, I'm looking at these terms and I've asked, well, how much does that cost? And you don't know. I look at what insurance went up for medical. It could happen with property insurance too. So there's an escalation there that I don't know what the value is. So there's all kinds of things that I want to look at that might make me want to opt out. I don't know because I don't have the document. So, and I hope it's as good as you say it is. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, I do have 2 other public comment cards, but I would just like to remind the council and everybody else here that we have to follow the Brown Act, so we can't really have the discussion back and forth. We can hear the comments from the public, and we can take their names and addresses, phone numbers, and we can get back to them, but we can't really have the back and forth discussion. Okay, thank you.
And if I may add to that, we'd like to keep the 3-minute rule in place as well. Thank you.
So next we have Lance Phillips.
My question is regarding one of the slides. Due to my own procrastination, I didn't get in before the moratorium on improvements. When I was ready to file my permit, it was too late. Everything shut down. So I wanted to do a dock canopy over my existing dock. And according to the slide up there, it says you are now enabling or allowing dock improvements and seawalls. So prior to this lease agreement or any of the new activities or any of the new requirements here, am I now able to submit for my new dock canopy over my existing dock? Or is, because the slide says seawalls and docks, they're still accepting permits now. So what's the state of that? Yes. I can apply, yes, but will it be considered is the question, or is it going to they're going to push it back until after the settlement agreement goes into effect? But according to the slideshow, it says you're considering docks and seawalls. Anyone have?
As previously announced, we really can't answer those questions under the Brown Act. We can refer you to somebody to give you that answer, but this board can't do that.
Well, the slide was a little misleading then. It was just
we can refer you to come into the PO office and talk to the staff. That's my recommendation. It's probably worth your time to go into the office, meet with the staff, and get direction.
Okay, thanks.
Real quick, it's in the agreement too, so if when you do see the copy of the agreement, it does list all the items that are allowed right now, and then it explains the process for other things, so it's out there.
Next we have Warren Kelsey.
Right here? Well, that was simple. For a complex subject, that was pretty simple. You use the word encroachments, and I'm inclined to believe that the water company is encroaching upon our rights, our property rights. If you take a look at the chain of title, you'll see that there's imperfections. I'm not going to get into that. Assuming you do own the land in fee simple, I have to ask the question, why are you so determined to control the land between the rear property lines of the waterfront lots in here and the water line? Your dam is, what, 1381, say 1382. That means that your water is not going to exceed that, except for in rare occasions. I guess it did here a few weeks ago. So why do you need the land, that margin between the water and people's property lines? This community was sold as a lake community. The lake is every bit of much amenity as the golf course is, the equestrian center and the parks, the streets. This was sold, it was marketed on the basis that you have lake rights. They come as a term for it, it's a collateral right with the ownership of the lot. So I'm not up here to fight you because we need the water, and I think the water company does a good job. But I think where property rights are concerned, I'm going to fight to protect mine. I've got 4 waterfront lots here and an investment on the water of a little over $400,000. And I'm here to tell you I'm not about ready to consent to something that is going to anyway infringe upon my property right. That's my message. I would end by saying there's a reliance issue here. When everybody bought into this community, all the stakeholders, they bought relying upon the marketing, the salesman that sat on the desk in front of them and said, hey, that lake is yours. You're buying in to an element that many communities, in fact, no other community in California, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 that I can think of, has a lake as part of their property rights. So I haven't seen the document. I saw an early draft, which I wasn't supposed to have, and quite frankly, it really turned me off. So if the current document's anything like what I read about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, Eric, you would know because I talked to you about the document that I had, and unless it's changed, unless it's swung to the favor of the property owner, you're going to have a little problem with me. Not combative, it's just a matter of property rights between the state and the federal government, and now the POA and the city and the water company. Where the hell do we stop with this? Where do we stop with the relinquishment of our rights?
I have to stop you. I'm sorry, Warren, but it exceeded the time.
Am I out of here?
Well, not physically, but thank you.
Madam Clerk, I'm just wondering if I could make a point of clarification on my presentation. Madam Clerk?
Please do so.
If you go back on the slide presentation that showed the 2 pictures on the right-hand corner there. So I just, point of clarification, not necessarily to directly answer the gentleman's question, but I want to make it clear that everything that you see on the other side of that thick black line on both of those pictures, we're not talking about taking anybody's private property. What we're talking about is that thick black line up there. Everything towards the lake beyond that thick black line is EVMWD property. It's not the homeowner's property. That's EVMWD's property. And so we want to make sure that we're allowing these encroachments onto EVMWD's property And we need to make sure that we're protected from a water quality standpoint and from an infrastructure standpoint, that people are not building things on our property that impact our water quality and impact our access to any infrastructure that might be buried underground. So I wanted to make that point of a clarification for both boards and the council. We're not talking about homeowners' private property. We're talking about encroachments onto EVMWD's property. So thank you for allowing me to make that clarification.
Thank you. Next, we have Dwight Johnson.
Good evening, folks. How are you? I'm Dwight Johnson. I've lived up here in Canyon Lake for close to 40 years now. One thing is I don't have to worry about my improvements on the lake. They're all permitted. So I'm safe, I guess. My main focus tonight was for dredging of the Eastport. And since we have all three of you here, the city, the water district, and the POA, I think it would be beneficial to this community for all three of you folks to get together and especially back in the East Bay and dredge the East Bay, so we, as a water consumer, we'd have more free water for all of us and more storage capacity. So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up tonight. And I'd like to have you folks look into it and see if we can all pitch in and get the dredging done. And it would help the boaters in the back. Plus, I think it would help all the people in EVMWD's district for more storage capacity. Thank you.
I have no more cards.
I believe dredging was the next topic.
You can go ahead and go on to the discussion of item number 2, and then we'll listen to public comment after your discussion.
Okay, thank you. No comments on dredging?
Okay, guess I have this ball. I'll make this really short. We did a dredging the POA did a dredging project in 2010, I believe, right? Yeah. Okay, 2003, I stand corrected. And Jack was there. And Jack's been there for everything. And there were some monies that came through LEJWA and public monies, and that project was never completed. In the meantime, we still get silt through Salt Creek and sediment, and our water capacity is somewhat reduced in the East Bay. It's shallower. Some people have issues with docks and boat lifts. And so we have a dredge committee. We've had a lot of conversations about starting a dredging project again. Over a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we applied for a grant. LEJWA helped us apply for that grant. We, as a private corporation, can't apply for a public money grant, and so we had a dredge committee meeting with members of the city council. I'm not sure if EVMWD you were present, and so that was a little less than 2 years ago, probably? A year ago? Okay, time flies. So we applied for a grant, and we didn't do all that well. We were kind of we put it together pretty quickly, and we weren't very high on the list of contenders. I think we would, our plan is that we would continue to apply for grants and kind of move the ball a little closer to the goal. We've had meetings with Army Corps of Engineers and talked to them. We pretty much have a green light from them as far as permitting goes. I sort of have that ball. I need to fill out the permit applications and apply to that federal agency, and then once we have that in hand, I think we'll go down the line and check off the rest of the boxes, the State Water Board, EVMWD, and continue to apply for, it's a pretty expensive project, multi-million-dollar project, so we would hope to get some public money. We would love to see the other two groups at the table with us participate, however that's possible going forward. Maybe we, go to the bank and open a passbook savings account, and we each put a little money in every year. In any case, it's kind of a long-term goal. It's an expensive project. I think it's something that would really help the water quality, the water capacity. It would definitely help the people that use the lake, that live here on the water, and I don't really have much else to say about that. It's a long-term goal, and I'm hoping that the three parties at this table can work cooperatively to make it happen. So that's about it.
Any other comments?
My only comment is I agree. I think if we all work together, we can come and try to get something done. It's a very complicated process. It involves a lot of funding, a lot of technical information, and it's really a journey. We've taken a lot of steps. We know a lot more than we did a year and a half ago. I went to most of the meetings on the grant application. It was interesting. If we do another grant, I'm clearly more informed. Casey, I think you went to some of those.
Yep.
I think you're much more informed about that process. Yeah. So again, it's complicated, a long journey, but we're going to start walking the steps and continue to walk the steps.
I think the next grant or opportunity is going to be either the following year or the year after. So we have some time, but not too much.
In my mind, I'm still would like to see some more information about exactly where we stand with the sediment. To me, there was original studies that seemed to say it was sitting, at the East Bay at the high end and just staying there. I think as we look at it, we see it's flowing down to the main lake more than we thought it was. So the good news is that it may not impact our members as quickly as we thought it would. The bad news is there's still sediment and it's still, coming into our lake. But we'll keep stepping ahead.
Dale, I think as we all look at this as a partnership between all three agencies here, I also think we need to look at our lake in a little bigger scope now. It's a regional issue because we get a lot of upstream water that comes in, excuse me, and from the San Jacinto watershed, from the dairies, from the silt, from the upstream pollution, to all the things that impact our lake, from the ecosystem to the water quality to the depth. I really think that we need to look at it in that form, bring the Santa Ana River process in this, and because that seems to be the trend today for water bodies. We're one of the few water bodies that are around. I mean, lakes are premium, and I think that the health and the welfare of our lake and our water and our people have a really big marketing issue, not only for the community, but for those customers that you guys serve that get that water. So I think it behooves us to look at it from more than just a local issue, but try to get as many partners involved, and we can be the spearhead to hopefully make that partnership and hopefully get some positive results.
Just a comment. It's not all bad news on the lake. Nancy Horton was kind of the expert in this, but there was a history of the water coming out of the septic tanks in Quail Valley and flowing into our lake, and that was a big problem as far as bringing pollutants into our water. With the work Nancy did with the other agencies and EVMWD, they were able to get sewers hooked up there in Quail Valley, so a lot of that pollution that was once flowing in rapidly is not doing that anymore. We've implemented the alum treatments, which is which has allowed the hazardous algae blooms to decrease. If you notice, the water isn't as green as often or as long or brown as often as long as it used to be. So we have been able to make some progress on the health of the lake. We still got a ways to go.
Getting back to the dredging, Phil and I were on the board when the dredging was actually going on in Canyon Lake, and there were some complications with wages and where to dispose of it when Audie Murphy Ranch was. So there's a big issue with not just dredging the lake, it's where do you put the material that you dredge from the lake, and it's pretty complicated. But, and the sewer, the septics that were coming in from Area 9 over here, actually Eastern is working on another section of Quail Valley now to get it sewered. And they have been pretty aggressive with the funding for that, so that'll help a lot in Canyon Lake. But the dredging is a huge project. It was part of another grant that was, I think it was an Army Corps grant. And wasn't it part of the 17 million?
The original, I think it was 13 million.
Yeah, something like that.
The form ledger.
Phil was probably in the thick of it. I came in after the dredging started, but so there is money available for it, but you really have to make a case, and I think the environmental end of the case is very important, because that seems to be the buzzwords that everybody's using, and it has to be regional. It can't just be Canyon Lake or the city or the POA going to it. Better off if you get Kevin Jeffries and the county involved, because the county does actually border a third of the lake, so they're involved in it too. But Greg has been knee-deep in it for many years, so he's a great resource for that too. So, and Phil can add to what I'm talking about.
Yes, the thing that we have to remember is Canyon Lake, being a man-made lake, has been around for, was it 50, how many years total? Lake Elson's been there a lot longer.
28.
How old is Canyon Lake?
1928.
Okay, before that, before the Tilley Agreement stuff was done 92 years ago, all the water that flowed in the watershed went all the way down to Lake Elsinore. So those folks in Lake Elsinore have rights to the water also that we all have to be aware of. So we can't just come in and make Canyon Lake 3 times as deep or some large amount of money, because there's rights and obligations of those property owners down there. That's just one small problem that we ran across when we were doing the original dredge project. The other, I think a lot of you folks here remember the fact that the soil is laden with nutrients now. It wasn't before. It's okay when it's in the ground or under the water, but as soon as you bring it out and you look at it, now you have something you have to contend with. And you can't just put it on the ground someplace else, till it in and reuse it because of those contaminants. You have to, at the time, we were looking at having to take that material and either blending it with Audie Murphy, which is no longer an option because they're built, or we have to take it to a Class 3 dump that will accept material that has these kind of nutrients. So it's a complex issue, but in this, as I think we all agree, it's something that the district, the POA, the city of Lake Elsinore, the county of Lake Elsinore, it's something we all have to work on together. It's a regional issue. And to have better quality of water here in Canyon Lake, it helps everyone, because in essence, it also helps when we go to treat the water and we use it for drinking. And granted, for recreation, it also helps the folks here in Canyon Lake. So I supported it way back in early 2000. I still support doing a project. Just remember, folks, it was expensive. It's only going to be twice as expensive, if not more, than when we looked at it back in the early 2000s. And we have to look for the additional funding. And so all of that being said, I think it's worth both, or all the entities getting together and working for it. I would encourage it from, just a property owner standpoint. I can see where they need it. So I would support it, and I think the rest of our board would if we have a project that's viable.
I just wanted to add that if you look at how far we've come in 5 years, for 5 years we've been trying to get a settlement agreement. And it's pretty hard to move projects forward when you can't even agree on what you already have existing. And I think if we take nothing else from tonight, I want you to look around and see everybody sitting at the table together. We want to solve problems together. It's not just Elsinore Valley, it's not just the city, and it's not just the POA. I think now that we have a settlement agreement that appears to be finalized and moving forward, now we can talk about doing projects that make sense for everybody. And I think by just the demonstration that we're all here tonight, we want to make things better and we want to work together. And that's what we've really been trying to do, at least from my perspective, for the last year. So although it doesn't seem like progress has been quick, progress has been successive, meaning we're building on things together and we're trying to work better together so we solve problems holistically and not create problems in vacuums. So I look forward to talking about dredging in the future. I look forward to talking about anything but a settlement agreement ever again. So I would like to see what we can do together and not just each entity individually, but collectively.
I'm certain that the city is willing to help, of course, and we have the ability to apply for the grants where the POA doesn't, and I know that this is going to be taking place as soon as we can. I was on the POA board when we started the dredging project, and I was on the POA board when we unfortunately ended the dredging project, and we really missed a golden opportunity at that time to do things. But that's the past, and this is the present, and I think that as a result of this type of a meeting, we're all going to work together. I know the homeowners on the East Bay are unhappy quite often, but we're going to do whatever we can to have that fixed. So if there's anything else anybody wants to talk about on dredging.
We do have a comment right over here. Turn the speaker on.
I don't know if this is, can you guys hear me okay? You know, it's been echoed a few times, just the importance of tonight's meeting, that with the three of us, the three bodies have come together, and I think it's awesome. It's incredible, and we have made progress in that. I think all of us here have also agreed that dredging is an important priority. I mean, 2003 was the last time we were looking at the project. So my question, and we probably don't have the answer if it's been since 2003, but with dredging as a whole, is it a ticking time bomb? How much time do we have to where it effectively becomes an issue with actually, you know, the water coming in and it filling up? And, you know, don't get me started with just the homeowners and them not being able to have docks and put their boats, but when does it become an actual issue? Have we done the stats on that? Have we looked at, is it a 10, a 15-year window, a 20-year window if we keep having floods every other year or every 4 or 5 years and more material keeps coming in the lake? Because if it's becoming, you know, an issue and our stats are showing that we need to make this an A priority, then I would hate to have our colleagues in 15 to 20 years, all new faces, say the same thing, that the last time the joint meeting took place was in 2020, and here we are talking about it again. So I think, you know, we're here tonight. You know, there's windows that are going to come up in the next year or two for grants. I don't know about you, but I'm all in. I would love to get committed and do whatever we can. I'll sacrifice as much time as I can to make it work, if that means going and speaking and trying to apply for grants, if that means doing it myself, whatever it takes. But I've been hearing this dredging conversation for so long now, and I don't want to just stand by and do nothing, and I believe my colleagues here feel the exact same way. So count me in, whatever I can do. I know that my colleagues here on the council, we feel the same way about it. I hope the POA, we can start this conversation again and get it going, and we take this thing seriously so we're not having the same conversation down the road. That's my sense on it. But I do want to say thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight, being a part of this. I think we've come a long ways. I really do. Not just between the city and the POA, but having the water board here too. Absolutely amazing. So thank you so much, and bringing some good insight, because this is regional. This isn't just Canyon Lake, it's Lake Elsinore, it's other entities that take place. So I think that's crucial that we keep in mind when we're looking at ways to not only fund the projects here that affect Canyon Lake, but ultimately affect Lake Elsinore as well.
Thank you. Before we have, unless anybody else wants to talk about dredging?
We do have a public comment card.
We still do? Okay.
We do.
Good, thank you.
We have Jack Wamsley.
Now, why didn't I know that?
Well, first of all, the dredging project was my project, and I don't think there's too many things that I don't have the answer for. It worked very successfully. We had problems, but it worked very successfully. We managed to dredge about 20% of what we intended to do on the East Bay. It's been about 10 years since that time. In recent checking, as far as depth is concerned, all the silt has filled back that we dredged out. So we've lost that amount of area in 10 years. If we would have been able to complete the dredging all the way down to where we were going, we would probably have been able to put that off for about 30 years. The dredging, we have a benefit now. I've been dealing with Eric, and we have talked with Brookfield. We've talked with Menifee. We've talked with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we have a location with reference to pumping. We do not have to haul it away. We can pump it into this area. That saves us a tremendous amount of money. Our original dredging operation was a little over $3 million. And it's definitely going to cost us more this time, but by not having to haul it away, it's going to save us a hell of a lot of money. Eric is in the process of getting a program to present to the water company, to the city, to all the other people involved, and that would include Leisure. We work very closely with Mark Norton. Mark Norton and I are very, very good friends, and I enjoy working with Mark. And I work with Phil, and I work very hard on the first dredging project to get the funds. I forget what we got. We got about $2 million or something like that. Yeah, somewhere along in there. And so we done a good job for the time we had to do. The reason we lost the dredging is because we took state funds. We took state funds to use, and they came down. We were paying our dredging people $28 an hour. That's not a bad wage. But the union got us at that point, and they said, hey, you got to pay dredging wages. And I said, what is that? $56 an hour. That's dredging the ocean. We're dredging a little lake up here. And it doesn't make any difference. So that's what killed us right there. The one thing that we screwed up on is we didn't buy the dredger. Leisure bought the equipment to start off, and Phil and I remember. And if the POA had bought the dredger, we could have bought it for $118,000. And the dredger, we designed that dredger for this lake with a very good dredging company that's all known all throughout the world. My 3 minutes. No. But anyway, Eric and I have worked on a direction. He will be coming to the other organizations, and we think we have a good plan. And I think that we'll be able to do the project, and do the completed project, and hopefully last for 50 years.
Thank you, Jack.
I have no more cards.
Change that 3 minutes to 5.
Oh.
Okay, before we go to the city manager update, does anybody need to take a break?
Can I get a cup of coffee?
Sure, if you want. Okay, we have one.
You want to do 5 minutes? Just
We're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Mayor, can you please announce the time?
Pardon me?
Can you please announce the time?
I sure can. It is 7:17.
Thank you.
Okay, it's the guy with the hammer again.
Get this thing going.
If you could all please take your seats so we can continue with this meeting. I thank you. We're going to 7:26, we're going to resume. And I think the city manager is up if he's prepared and everybody's ready.
As prepared as I'm going to get. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Well, since I have a captive audience, I thought we'd just give a brief update on things completely unrelated to water, things that the city has in the works. 2020 is going to be a very busy year for the city. We have a lot of projects coming online in 2020. And I don't know, I guess you have it in your packet, but for the folks facing me, I don't know if you want to, we're going to put it on the screen behind you here. One of the first projects coming up that we're working on implementing is our EMS subscription program. The City Council approved this ordinance on November 6th. As you know, our fire protection services are provided through a contract with the county, and the county contracts with CAL FIRE to be the county's fire department. So CAL FIRE is the organization that actually provides the service for us. A lot of people don't know this, but cities are required to provide certain services. One of those services is fire protection. Police protection is another. But cities are actually not required to provide emergency medical service. And what I'm talking about here is when you call 911 and you have a medical emergency, the fire department rolls out and they bring a paramedic, and that is the EMS response. What I'm not talking about is the AMR ambulance showing up. In Riverside County, AMR is not designated as a first responder, and so they are your transport to the hospital. So the fire department rolls, paramedic provides you treatment, you're handed off to AMR, and the ambulance takes you to the hospital. So it's that EMS portion that we're looking at, because as our costs have increased year after year in a way that's unsustainable. In fact, we've increased our contract for CAL FIRE services have increased 79% in the last 5 years. We're looking at about $1 million increase in the last 5 years for the same level of service, the same one engine and the same one station, and just not sustainable for the city. What we found is in any given year, anywhere between 80 to 85% of those calls are EMS calls. And so what a lot of cities who are experiencing the same problem we're doing is they're going to this EMS subscription program. In order to continue providing the service, it really has to become kind of a fee for service. And so what this program will do is on a voluntary basis, people can opt to subscribe to the EMS program. That'll be a low monthly rate. We're getting ready to go out to a fee study to determine what that will be, but for the sake of this discussion, let's say it's $10 a month. And then when you have to call 911 for a medical call, then you don't pay anything at all. If you opt not to subscribe, that's fine too, but you're going to get an invoice if you use the service. Now, some people may choose that route because they'll understand that their insurance would cover that. Other people's health insurance would not cover that, so it'd be a personal decision. But we feel that this route is probably the most fair and equitable way to cover these increased costs, which are primarily EMS calls. So we're looking to roll that out. We're probably looking at that fall of this year to have that program up and running. We have a council meeting Wednesday night, and at that meeting will be a second reading for final approval of a single-family residential rental registration, inspection, and crime-free housing program. I know that's a mouthful. We usually just call it the residential rental program. What we found is that rental homes, and what we're talking about here is you rent your house out for a long period of time. We're not talking about the short-term vacation type rentals, but long-term rentals. But rental homes are responsible for a disproportionate share of code enforcement and police calls for service. And so the program is designed to encourage upkeep of single-family rentals to provide for the health and safety and welfare of all residents in Canyon Lake. And what the program will require is that you have a business license to rent out your home. If you are renting out your home full-time, you are really operating a business. And many cities treat it as such, and you got to pull a business permit, so we're going to start doing that. It will also come with an inspection and a lease addendum that will have to be included if you're a landlord, you include an addendum with your lease agreement with your tenant that requires them to maintain the property and not be a nuisance. So we're looking to roll this program out this year, and starting probably in March, and have it up and running fully by the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1. This is something that came out of discussions with the POA, actually. We understand that the POA has a moratorium, has a prohibition on short-term vacation rentals. So you're talking about your Airbnbs, your VRBOs, anything of less than 30 days. So the city wants to be helpful here and address issues that have been in the community. So at the council meeting on Wednesday, we're bringing an ordinance that will place a moratorium on all short-term rentals. Common issues that we've been experiencing with these are noise, excessive on-street parking, overcrowding, accumulation of trash and debris, and disorderly conduct. You're fundamentally operating a commercial lodging use in a residential zone, and that's not something that the city is interested in allowing. So any rentals of less than 30 consecutive days will no longer be allowed. Once the ordinance is in place, we can submit it to the Airbnbs and others and say, look, we have an ordinance against this. You can't have this listing on your site, and we can enforce it that way. So it should have a pretty immediate impact. It came to the council's attention about a year ago that the county / CAL FIRE has not been conducting what we call fire and life safety inspections. So these are primarily businesses, places where people gather, restaurants, churches, those sorts of things. The county has not been going in and taking a look to make sure that you have proper ingress and egress and fire hydrants in the right places and those sorts of things. So the city has decided to take on this responsibility to ensure the safety of residents and visitors to our city. We have sent our entire enforcement staff to training, and they've been certified actually as fire marshals. And we plan to begin these inspections. We'll start rolling it out in the next few weeks, but fully be up and running by March 1st. The city's been looking at for many years actually, options for dealing with the escalating costs of fire protection. Our budget for fiscal year 1920 for the fire contract is $2.3 million, which is an increase of $1 million over the past 5 years. So one of the options we're looking at is whether it makes sense for the city to start a municipal fire department. So we've contracted with Emergency Services Consulting International, which is a well-known public safety consulting firm. They are conducting a study for us, analyzing the feasibility of starting a municipal fire department. The study will include an implementation plan, so should the numbers make sense and the council decide to go that way, we'll have a plan that we can, it'll be a roadmap to how we need to get it up and running. Similarly, on the police side, our contract with the county for police services has been rising at an alarming rate as well. We're at $1.8 million for our contract this year, and that pays for one deputy position, 24 hours. It's increased by $516,000 over the last 6 years, which is a 41% increase, and again, for the same exact level of service. So our hands really been forced to look for alternatives there too. We recently joined with 6 other cities of Harupa Valley, Lake Elsinore, Moreno Valley, San Jacinto, Temecula, and Wildemar, in a contract with Citygate Associates to assess the feasibility of forming a new police department under a joint powers agreement. So we'll see how that study comes back. In addition, we've heard that the city of Menifee, who's just forming their own police department, may be interested in talking with us about a partnership there. So we're actively looking for ways to provide the service at a cost that's sustainable for us. Longer term, we think economic development is the ultimate solution. As many of you know, we've officially placed a request with the BLM to purchase the 2 parcels that lie within the city boundaries. You see them on the map here. We've submitted the official application, the request, and have received a response acknowledging that. We've been working closely with Congressman Calvert's office on this. We've had meetings with RCA and more meetings forthcoming. Since word has gotten out that we've been doing this, we've received interest from the development community already. We've had 2 meetings with 2 separate developers who are interested in particularly the piece over by the Jump Lagoon, which is less encumbered in terms of habitat and RCA conservation areas. So we feel that this has tremendous potential long-term, but it's likely to be a very long process. The BLM is saying if we just follow their normal process, it could take as long as 10 years. We think with the help of Congressman Calvert's office, we can bring that number down a little bit, but there's a lot of work to be done there. A lot of potential, but it's going to take some time. Also, we're actively looking at other sites that might be developable. We've applied for some SB2 grant funding. We intend to use that to produce a specific plan for the town center to start envisioning what that could be someday. But again, that's with so many different owners of so many different parcels in that center, that would definitely be a long-term play. So in the short term, we have some programs coming online that should help the city financially. Midterm, we're looking at finding other solutions for public safety, and long-term, we see economic development as the solution. For the past couple of months, we've started to understand better what our responsibilities are in terms of our MS4 permit, how to stay in compliance with keeping contaminants out of the lake. The city has responsibility when it comes to city infrastructure, streets, storm drains, for making sure that contaminants don't make their way to the lake. There's a new requirement that pertains to trash, and that's something that we're going to need to work closely with the POA on here shortly. We had a meeting with the County Flood Control and Water Conservation District last week to better understand what those requirements are. So we're going to have to probably make some investments there to make sure we're in compliance. So hopefully we'll have a meeting there with the POA in the next few weeks on this. City's been really upgrading our technology and cybersecurity. We've upgraded all of our computers. We're getting ready to move our servers to the cloud, to digitize all of our files, and we're working on a new website. We actually had a ransomware attack right around Christmas. It was on Christmas Eve that we discovered it, and we've been in transition between two IT companies, and the new IT company really stepped up and stopped it before it got too bad, and we were able to revert to a backup of our servers that had happened right before the attack, and we were very, very fortunate that we caught it when we did. It could have been very bad. So we're going to be looking at ways to update our cybersecurity as we move things to the cloud. We've got a few public works projects coming up. We're the 27th of this month, you'll start to see work on the fence along Railroad Canyon Road. That work should be done by the first week in February. We're also repairing and repainting the monuments, the entry monuments on Railroad Canyon Road. That work should start this week or next. You'll see some ADA improvements that will be made at City Hall. And we're going to be going out to bid. We haven't been pleased with the landscaping work that's been done along Railroad Canyon, so we're going to be going out to bid for a new company to do a better job with our landscaping. We have some big events coming up in 2020. 2020 is the 30th anniversary of the city. The city incorporated December 1st of 1990. And so in addition to our Veterans Day event that we do every year, we are planning a big 30th anniversary gala and State of the City event. The actual incorporation date of December 1st is our target. We'd love to have it in this room. If we can work with the POA on that, we'd love to join with the POA and put together a great event. And then we had our first in a while, Winter Wonderland event in this past December, and it was really a big success. And so we want to build on that next year. We're open to working with the POA as well. I'm not sure if there's an interest there in joining forces or if we want to continue having separate events, but we can talk about that. But we intend to really up our game next year on that event as well. A couple of upcoming meetings of interest. We have a council meeting this Wednesday. One of the big items there is that we're going to discuss and set goals for 2020. On Thursday at 3 o'clock in the council chambers, our planning director and consultant will be hosting a public meeting to update people on the housing element of our general plan. As part of the requirements from HCD that we do a lot of public outreach, so that's why we're doing that. We don't expect it to be very well attended. It's pretty dry stuff, but you're welcome to be there if you're interested. And then in February, at the February 5th council meeting, we'll be doing our mid-year budget review. And that is all I have this evening. Be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the update. Any questions of the city manager? Mr. Nolan?
Yes, sir.
Here, I'll just reach over here. Go ahead and slide.
Mr. Nathan, years before you were here, we as a city had to institute a UUT, user utility tax, to help to supplement the city to pay for emergency services here. And that was supposed to be for a term, that term ended, and then it got extended. And I think current state is that that's unlimited. It just doesn't have an ending term.
Correct.
So I think the members of the community are probably going to say that they're already paying for emergency services and wondering why they would have to pay a fee to get emergency services, because they're all paying out of the utility bills.
Sure.
Renter or a homeowner, either, regardless. So could you address how the UUT is either configured into this consideration, or what decisions are made with respect to UUT? Thank you.
Be happy to. Yeah, the UUT is become a critical part of our budget. The city's budget is only about $5.2 million a year. The UUT is about $1 million of that. Currently, we're spending about $4 million a year on public safety. So while the UUT is a tremendous help, it doesn't come close to covering that amount. We certainly don't want people to feel like they're paying for things twice. And I think, when we lay the numbers out, you'll see that we have the UUT. We also have a portion of property tax money that's dedicated to fire, which is also approximately $1 million. So there's $2 million, but we've got a $4 million nut to crack just on public safety. And those costs have just risen so drastically. I think even, when back in 2018, when the UUT was re-upped, I know the council grappled with the decision back then of whether to ask the voters to re-up at the current amount, which is I think 3.95%, or to ask for more, because they realized back then that this was going to be a problem. But I think the fear probably was that, if we ask for more, it might not pass, and then we'll really be in trouble. So the decision was made to ask for the same exact amount. It passed, but it's just not enough to cover. So the council's really deliberated on what the best way to go about this. The idea of asking for an increase in the UT certainly has come up, but I think that's a difficult ask when people just passed the UT in the 2018 ballot. Also, there's the train of thought that the most fair way to pay for a service is to have those who are actually using the service pay for it. So in the case of EMS, you're able to identify exactly what those calls are and have the people who are actually using the service pay for the fee. There's no one answer. There's any number of ways we could go after this thing, but the bottom line is if the community wants to continue having that service, we're going to have to find ways to pay for it.
Thanks. Curious how much you expect to collect from the EMS supplement or subscription?
We have a fee study that will be underway shortly that can help answer some of those questions. I hate throwing guesstimates out because as soon as you mention a number, people kind of latch onto it. But I'll be very broad. I think probably somewhere in the $300,000 to $400,000 a year range.
And is that going to solve the problem long-term, or is this just another interim solution?
By itself, no, it doesn't solve the problem. But I think that paired with some of the other projects the city's bringing online, paired with the city's efforts to find alternative ways of providing the services altogether, whether that ends up being, contracting with another city or forming a JPA for police services, whether that means forming our own fire department. So I think that there's no one solution that's going to solve the entire problem, but we're piecing it together.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you for the presentation. We're going to move on to see if we can select a future date. There are 3 dates that are listed here. Can we get some type of a consensus as to?
Mayor, I would just like to throw out there that Monday, July 13th is not going to work for the city, so I'd like to propose Monday, July 20th instead. The 13th is League of California Cities meeting for the council, so council will not be able to meet on the 13th.
So you said the 20th?
The 20th, I'm proposing Monday, the 20th.
Well, we'll take one thing at a time. So this is open for discussion. How do these dates fit with everybody here?
If I may, we'll have to look into the 20th for room availability, and we can get back to the council and announce those dates at a later time. We've confirmed the April 13th date for our availability and the room.
So then you're going to get back to everyone here with the date, with the dates?
Yes, perhaps on April 13th we can announce the later two dates.
Okay, well then I guess that's the end of this topic then. Then we're going to move into city council comments, and I probably don't have to remind everybody that we have a 3-minute limit. So Councilmember Bonner, would you like to make some comments?
All passed. Good meeting.
Okay, Councilmember Green. No? Councilmember Smith.
Just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo.
Good meeting, and on April 29th will be the Ledgewood Summit. We'll be having the TMDL panel update speakers. We're going to highlight the fishery in Canyon Lake. It's going to be fun, and you're all invited.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying, Casey.
Sorry. April 29th, Ledgewood Summit. It will be during the day, so around 9 to 1. Lunch will be served. It will be held at Launch Point in Lake Elsinore. We'll be having a TMDL panel update, speakers, and we're going to be highlighting the fishery in Canyon Lake. So everyone is invited. Invitations will be coming out. That's it.
Thank you. Well, then I guess that's down to me, and I've been told in the past that I've never met a microphone that I didn't like, so I'm going to take just a couple of quick seconds to say that I think this is just, maybe I shouldn't use the word historic, but especially since I'm sitting next to an attorney, I have to be careful as to what adjectives I use, but we've tried to do this for many, many years in the past. I don't know if we got wrong information, but way back when I was on the POA board, and I'm not going to go too far back, our attorneys advised us that we couldn't have these type of meetings. Well, somehow that's been changed. We're having these meetings, and I just want to thank everybody for participating. I certainly hope that the information that was provided was helpful, and I'm looking forward to these dates for the future meetings. So I thank you for that, and I'm going to turn this over to the EVMWD.
Thank you, Jordan. All right, this time we're going to move on to our board comments. Start with Director Ryan. Any comments?
Well, I think this is a great day. Seems that we've got it in writing now, and every time either there was a new board at EVMWD or a new POA board or city council, we always had to meet to explain everything again, and I'm glad to see it in writing so we don't have to do that again. The other thing is that there was a gentleman here talking tonight about the lake and how it was sold as, a homeowner's lake. And from the EVMWD perspective, it's our responsibility to protect the water as a reservoir, because that's what it is first. And yes, it's great that we can have, recreation on the lake and keep it at certain levels and operate it at certain times, with keeping in mind that the recreation is important to the city of Canyon Lake, but also keeping in mind that it's our duty to protect the 45,000 connections that we have at EVMWD to provide the most reasonable price for water that we can provide for all of EVMWD customers, which is Marietta, Lake Elsinore, Wildemar, Canyon Lake, and parts of Orange County up on the hill. So we have been very aware of the concerns of the city and EVMWD, but I think, and this agreement that we put together shows that, but I want to remind everybody that first it is Canyon Lake Reservoir. And thank you for this meeting tonight. Thank you.
Director McBride, any comments?
Just to echo, I appreciate the collaboration just to set the terms. I know coming together, 3 parties, it's awesome. It looks like you've come a long way. And just to reiterate that it is a public good and to provide clean drinking water to those connections. Although it's beautiful, it can be used as a recreation lake, and to be able to enjoy that as a public good for the residents in Canyon Lake, that there still is a responsibility in mitigating that and balancing that. And I think that's what this agreement kind of fine-tunes and brings in, of coming to the table and saying, hey, this is a good fit for both of us, realizing that we have to provide clean drinking water, but also realizing those obligations of providing a recreation lake where you can enjoy and have that with your family and community. And so seeing this come together is beautiful, and it's going to allow a streamlined process to be grandfathered in, and moving forward, being able to have everyone on board so there is no confusion. So I'm grateful for that, and it was a great night. Thank you for meeting everyone.
Okay, Director Burke.
Thank you, President Morris. I think the part I'd like people to take away is I hear it's the POA versus the Water District versus the city, and it's the same people. We're all residents, we're all property owners, or residents renting, and we are consumers. So the only people we're fighting against really is ourselves. So I think I'm really pleased tonight that, first I want to thank my fellow board members for coming out and showing and displaying their commitment to not only water quality, but Canyon Lake and the residents that we serve here. I think it's really important. I also think it's very important that we are looking forward to look at projects like dredging cooperatively and collaboratively however we can, and to make sure that we ensure public health and safety, because that's number one. Whether it's drinking the water or even swimming in the water, we need to make sure that we're doing our best to be good stewards and manage the resource wisely. So again, I just want to thank everybody and for the opportunity of inviting us to join along tonight. Thank you.
Director Williams?
Thank you. I'd like to echo everyone else's sentiments. Obviously, having a meeting like this is something we should do again in the future. Again, it might be nice to have a meeting where we're not talking about settling a lawsuit, but what we're going to do in the future to serve everybody. From the Water District perspective, from all the entities here, you guys are ratepayers. We respect that. And we have many more people outside the gates of Canyon Lake. This probably wouldn't have been a very fruitful meeting 5 or 6 years ago. But in today's spirit of cooperation, I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. Been doing it for 5 or 6 years. From the district standpoint, you know, it's 1,100 people that we're talking about trying to join this lawsuit, this class action lawsuit, and agree with the settlement. When you talk about the volume of square footage, it's over 1 million square feet of encroachments that we're in contention here. These are big issues when you talk about property ownership and when somebody sells a home or what they originally bought a home. Those are things that we as the Water District weren't involved. You as a POA probably weren't involved. There was people outside making promises to folks that they've bet their livelihood on or their biggest investment in their home. So it was a touchy issue for a lot of folks. It was complex, but it shows you when you have everyone in the room wanting to solve a problem, it can be done. And I look forward to most of the folks in Canyon Lake, if not all of them, joining in the settlement process. And once that's done, we'll have a clean slate and everyone can move forward. So thank you all, everyone, for your efforts.
Thank you, Director Williams. So many comments to state, and I only have 3 minutes, but I just want to say that after listening to Chris and all the money issues you have, and I know the POA has all kinds of stuff going on. You can't even imagine the issues that the water district faces outside of Canyon Lake. With the PFAS and the PFOA that Greg was talking about, and all the demands from the State Water Resources Control Board, and us needing to fix a dam that there's nothing wrong with it, but the Department of Dams, because of what's going on in the country, is going to make us build a new dam. All these rate things that we have pressures on us. The only thing that I would say to all of you is I'd like us to be better partners so that you understand our issues as much as we understand yours, because we really are on the front lines of dealing with this on a daily basis. The residents, they just can't. There's just life is there's too much going on, but you guys are. So I just hope that through this and knowing that we got past this settlement, we can all really work together to see what our common goals are and what our issues are, and to help each other talk to residents about those issues and make them understand that we are their elected representatives. We're not here because we love it. We love doing what we do, but some of the stuff's really hard, and we just need to be great partners at it. And I understand this took a long time. No agreement's always a perfect agreement, but I'm really glad we're here today and we had this meeting. And you can see by the fact that 5 of our board members come here, we really do care about Canyon Lake and about this issue. So again, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, Tom.
I just want to thank everybody for coming. Everybody donating your time to come to these kind of meetings collectively is great for our community, and I look forward to the future meetings. Thank you.
Jeannie?
Well, I guess I'll just echo everybody else. Thank you. It's really nice to see everybody here in one room. And for the city, I'll see you guys Wednesday night. Thank you.
I appreciate everybody getting together. I'm pretty new around here, so I don't understand all the heartache that has gone on. I don't live on the lake. I never worried at all about you guys' worry about water quality. I appreciated it, and that's not my issue at all. So I don't know who caused all that tension, but maybe it's not all of Canyon Lake. Just to put that into perspective. And if it's coming off the backside of Facebook, that's another whole world, isn't it? So anyway, but what I want to say is I think there's a huge volume of folks here that are fully respecting what the water district does and appreciate that. And so thank you for taking care of that for us. Dredging is something that's important to us, but I think it's important to you. I was very encouraged to hear your words tonight about that. It is very expensive. It's something we could move forward on, and I look forward to working together with you on that. To the city, I would say I'm impressed with the presentation. Thank you very much. I haven't been paying attention to what's going on over there. I know there's money problems. Maybe you've heard me say before that I hope as you look for different alternatives that you look square in the face at raising the tax so that everybody here pays for the services that we all expect, regardless of whether we think we should get them anyway, because prices are going up. It's not magic. I just hate to see us go down the road of doing things that have not been successful in the past because we're afraid to ask for more tax revenue. I support more tax revenue. The more people that chip in, the better off we're going to be, my personal opinion. But thank you very much.
I'd like to thank you, the EVMWD board, for coming. I mean, we've been working on this for many years, and I know a lot of you, and I'm always happy to see you, which is good. There's been a lot about the lawsuit, how there's a lot of animosity. I would just say personally, I can shake each of your hands with a smile and feel good about you because we've been able to talk over the last couple of years. We all have a little bit different missions. The mission of the city is somewhat about health and safety and transportation. Our mission is the benefit and the values of the property and the enjoyment of the property by our members. Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District's mission is to provide safe drinking water and sewage to its ratepayers. So the missions are slightly different, and everyone needs to do their mission. There's not a reason that we all don't focus on our mission. But at the part of the center of that mission is the quality of the lake, and I think all of us can agree that that's one of the central points of what we all need to work on is the quality of Canyon Lake. So anyway, your attendance is welcome. Thank you.
Well, I guess it's time to thank everybody for being here. The city is going to adjourn their portion at 8:01. That's us.
POA is a little bit late to the show. We're going to go 8:02.